Clearly, we're really excited to be here. It's a beautiful day.
Yeah.
And we're recording for SheaMoisture virtual series.
Yeah. Today we're here at Sandbox Studios, and we're going to jump into social media 101. I'm Maxine McDonald.
And my name is Bunmi Adeoye. And I feel like we're really well equipped to talk about social media.
Yeah. So, outside of being co-founders of Code Black, we're also communications professionals who've been around for
some time.
And I think between the two of us, like, we've represented clients in probably all the industries you can really think about, everything from tech to travel to
lifestyle, beauty, fashion, celebrity, influencer, you name it. We've seen it all.
And part of what we've seen is the rise of social media and how it's become a key part of really any communications plan, and like how platforms have evolved and people are using social media in different ways. So what we wanted to do today is come together and chat a little bit about the things that we've noticed, the things that we've learned, and impart some of those as tips to you as you grow your brand, your business, some things that you can think about as you navigate the social media space.
Yeah. So should we get to it?
Yeah, let's jump right in.
So, number one, the foundation.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that.
Yeah, I think that one of the key things you need when posting is a really strong visual. Not all platforms are necessarily visual first.
Yeah.
Like I think about maybe Twitter that started off and it's really about, those zippy captions. Really.
Yeah.
But even with Twitter, your posts typically perform better if there's some sort of visual attached to it. So in thinking about the foundation of a post, having a strong visual that is really striking, clear, it's a pet peeve of mine.
What's your pet peeve, Max?
I'm gonna tell you. One of my pet peeves is blurry images.
Okay, well, what if you're about blurry images?
If your brand is called Hazy 101.
That it would work.
You are right. There are exceptions, I think, to every rule.
Yeah.
But I think as
a standard, yes, I agree.
You want to have a clean, crisp image. You do not want to use stock photos.
Generally, no. Like, you want something that has life, that represents what you're trying to do.
Yeah, that is sort of like there's context around it. I think unless you're doing maybe, if you're thinking about like fashion, where you maybe you just want to have really clean images on white, that could work. But I think for most businesses, most brands, stock photos, and even then, it needs to be stylized. So no stock photos.
Let's move on from that. Unless you're a stock photo company and that is what you want to showcase on, let's say, Instagram, but generally, no.
Yeah. I think captions, you really want to take some time to think about your caption. Something that's really well thought out. Use spell check. Let's, make sure it's grammatically correct.
Yeah. And I think when you have a great caption, it really works in concert with the image as well. It can just really strengthen it.
Yeah.
And I found over the years that you could have a really short caption and that can do well. But sometimes there are times when you can have a super long caption. Like, I've seen it both ways, where you have a super, super long caption, and that does really well to actually put into context whatever image you're showing.
Yeah.
Like in everything in PR, social media is a tool of PR, and I feel like social media helps with storytelling. So that's part of what you want to be able to do.
Yeah, that's really true. It's not either or. It's often both and. But thinking about just thinking about what you want to say, and not necessarily trying to fill a word quota, but really thinking about what is it that you're trying to emote. Creating captions that have some sort of emotional connection typically do better.
And I think it depends on your brand. I think between us, we've seen so many different variations. If you're a photographer, then in a lot of cases, your visual is the language that you're speaking.
That's really good.
If you are a model or something like that, then again, it's something very visual. If you're a writer, like I've seen versions of images where the words are the image. So I think within reason, again, we're talking about foundation, you just want to make sure that you're communicating something clearly.
Yeah, and that your caption relates to your image.
Yeah.
Because we do see that practice where people sort of like have these visuals that have
Nothing to do with it.
And I think that can be quite irritating to your audience.
Well, it's confusing.
Yeah.
It's confusing. If it goes back to that the joke, we were being really jokey about it around if a hazy image is your brand, then have at it. But I think for the most part, if we're talking about social media one-on-one, you want to just make sure that caption is clear about what you're doing. And people can see through it. If you post a hot shot of yourself and then you're like, blessed, hashtag blessed. It's like, it's just confusing.
Well, I mean, maybe you're blessed with good luck. I don't know.
Which is okay. I might post that one day, you know? But then you'll know. And then speaking of hashtags, I think we'll get more into that. But definitely hashtags are a great way to reach an audience that you are not reach an audience who may want to see whatever it is that you're posting. Yeah. So I think that's really helpful. I think that's a basic.
Hashtags and then tagging locations and tagging people. That can be another way where people can find your content. So I think using tagging. One thing I would say though is there is a trend of people tagging people in photos who are not in the photo, not related, don't want to be connected with the content.
Very irritating.
And that is really annoying. Yeah. So don't do that.
Yeah, I don't even know if I have an analogy for it. It's like, I have to think about it. It will come to me at some point during our discussion.
And then what also happens is that if people comment on the photo, then now those people who are tagged in it are getting the notifications, which I think is like the opposite of what you want. You want people to feel really good and connected about your content. You don't want them to feel annoyed by it. So
use that with caution. I feel like when either myself personally in terms of my social media, when I'm tagging and stuff, I really appreciate it if it's content that makes sense for me and I would connect to. When it's just something random, first of all, it's just very confusing. You're like, what's going on?
Yeah.
I'm not sure what's happening. Why am I in this conversation? Why am I in this room?
It's like when people put you in groups on Facebook that you didn't ask to be in, these chats, and then you're like getting all the notifications.
And then you have to be the person that's like left group.
Yeah. Anyways, we digress. The next thing, inspiration.
Yes.
I think it's one of the best ways you can develop your social media presence and branding is by finding accounts that you feel inspired by. Like if you're just starting out, maybe it doesn't even necessarily have to be other accounts that are in your direct industry, but finding those examples that you feel like, wow, they're producing really great content, or I really love their captions, or I really love the way they're engaging their audience. It's a great way for you to find ideas, not to copy, but as a place to start giving you something to think about how you can create your own content that reflects on your own brand and business.
Yeah, and I think a really good tool for this too, a really good social media tool for this is Pinterest, actually. I remember hearing this from a social media influencer. Her name is, it's really Anna, and she actually doubled the Cuts social media following because she was able to create really, really engaging content. And one of the things that she said was that she goes on Pinterest a lot to make like these mood boards and really find things that really match the aesthetic that she's going for. She gets a lot of inspiration from that. So don't even think that you just need to get inspiration from the platform that you're on. You could get it from, again, you can get it from Pinterest, you could get it from Twitter, you can get it from TikTok. There's like so many platforms. And to me, it's very interesting how all these platforms kind of intermingle, you know? So the inspiration really can come from anywhere. I think the other thing is be consistent. So what does that mean? Because that can mean different things to different people and different brands.
Yeah, I think that there are a few different ways you can be consistent. One, very basic, is having the same handle as much as possible across all platforms. So for us, we're Code Black CN on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook, and that just makes it really easy for people to find you and know that the account that they found is your account.
It also makes it easy for you to communicate it.
Yeah.
So you're not like, oh, it's Code Black CN on Twitter, but it's something else on Instagram, and it's something else 123 on Facebook. It's like, really take the time to find that. And I know it's really disheartening when you have a name for your brand in mind and you search it and it's already taken, and they, it puts up the default, well, you could be this, XYZ. But like, it could be something where you go back to the drawing board, if you can, to either rename or think of some sort of clever way to talk about your brand. So it could be brand, I'm here, or it's like, you have to play with it. I've seen different examples of it.
I think with that, sometimes it makes sense, even if there's a platform that is emerging that you're not ready to step into and you're not even sure if you want to, just still taking that practice of creating an account to have your handle, so that, in 3, 6 months, even a year, when if you decide that you want to be active on that platform, you already have your handle.
Oh, that hurts me. I had Bunmi, my first name only, as a handle on Twitter years and years ago, and I was just like, I don't have time. I'm just gonna just delete this.
Oh, wow.
It hurts my heart because I could have been
Bunmi.
a first name.
Yeah,
I could have just
that's
been my
crazy.
name. I know. I was an early adopter, but I was an early abandoner as well.
Oh my gosh.
Which brings us to, who are you? So this is related to bios.
It's not the existential question, but at your core, who are you? But who are you?
Yeah, I think a good bio is really helpful to sort of contextualize who you are, what you're about, what you're interested in, so that people come in and happen upon your whatever platform you're on. They're like, okay, I understand what this is. I'm interested in this.
I think it's about providing the factual information, but also providing the feeling. So you can say the same thing in many different ways, but talking about yourself or your business in a way that also, it gives an example of who you are, it gives a feeling too, I think can be really helpful.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is, you can change up your bio too. If you find that your brand has evolved, change that up. Or if something's going on from a current event standpoint, change that up as well. I think sometimes you have your platform for a long time and it's just the same all the time, which is okay if that's where you're at. But if you're a brand that's constantly evolving, or you want to be showing that you're really connected to what's happening, then change that up. You can always change it back to back to what it was before.
Be a brand.
Be a brand. Be a brand. So what does that mean?
So when I think about this, I think about more as you develop yourself, as you develop your business. Outside of just, okay, so we've talked a little bit about posting, we talked about the basics of posting, having a photo, having a caption, all of those things. But thinking about your brand as a person and thinking about how would they move through the world, who would they interact with? And I think that can be really helpful in finding other brands to follow, to interact with. Thinking about, besides the content that is very clearly connected to your business, what other content should you be posting? A lot of times I think brand pages become very boring because all they do is post product, and service.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like, okay, we get it, you are a catering company, or we get it, you sell hats. But people don't only want to see that type of content. So how do you create content that is still connected to your business, but is also like, it's a bit more expansive, a little bit more holistic?
Yeah, I really love that when brands actually show how to use their product or their service in real life. It's not, like you said, hats. It's like, I want to see someone living their best life in that hat. I want to put me in a situation where I'm like, oh yeah, I need that hat to do whatever I need to do.
Without that hat,
nothing's happening. And I think that's a really, like, thinking of your brand as a person as opposed to just this entity, this thing. Yeah. I think when you are thinking about your brand as a person, it allows the viewer to connect with it more. There's that opportunity to be like, wow, like I feel like this is my bestie.
Yeah.
I wanna like talk to this brand. So I think that's really, really a great way to put it.
Also, if you're thinking about collaborating, whether it's with influencers or other businesses, thinking about your brand as a person can help you figure out whether or not it's a good match. So me as a person, would I go to this place or would I interact with this person?
Yeah.
It kind of gives you a context through which you can filter different decisions.
Yeah, and I've done this before where I've built out social media for brands that had nothing at all before. It was just a blank space. Yeah, so it really is a fun sort of activity to really start to fill in those social media feeds with the words and the language and the visual of what that person would be connected to, or celebrity even, you know? Yeah, it's like, oh yeah, I know that this person would really vibe with Idris Elba, who's always top of mind for me for some reason. I think we can move on to the next point on that note, which is prioritize the platforms that your audience uses. So I think it's really thinking about, if Instagram is where your audience is, then focus on that. And then if you have other platforms, repurpose that content where it makes sense for those other platforms. So I always think of this, like just because it works on Instagram, you may need to tweak it a little bit for it to work on Twitter. Or you may need to make a call as well to decide whether or not you're going to put that on LinkedIn. Does it make sense for your LinkedIn? Or is it something that should really just live on Instagram? So just a little tip there to think about.
A lot of times there are so many platforms and it can be really difficult figuring out where to be or how much time to spend. So I love the idea of prioritizing the platforms where you know your audience spends the majority of its time. A lot of platforms are linked, so often if you post something on Instagram, you have the option to directly share it on Twitter or Facebook, and that's a really easy way of creating content for those platforms. But to your point, just sharing it or automatically like that, it doesn't necessarily show up the best. So I do agree with you. I think that taking some time to, maybe edit the caption a bit. Maybe you actually, on Twitter, you decide you don't need the video, the image, you just want the caption. So I think that those are some things to think about. And then also prioritizing the platform. Also prioritizing platforms can mean thinking about the frequency in which you're active. So, for example, if you feel that your audience really spends most of their time on Facebook, then maybe that means you post every day on Facebook, but you only post once a week on Instagram. That's okay.
Yeah.
It's really just thinking about, one, where does your audience live? Two, how much time do you have? There are a lot of things to do in this
Social
world.
media manager is a full-time job. Yeah.
So you may not have 15 hours a week to create and post. Maybe you only have an hour. So where where does it make sense for you to spend the bulk of your time based on your brand and your audience?
That's so true. This takes us to a good place in terms of using tools. So there are so many different tools that can help you with scheduling, help you with planning, help with design, help with photo editing.
Do you have any favorites?
I really like InShot.
I recently just downloaded that.
I really like it because it's like an editor for photos and for films. You can clip, you can resize it so that it works for a number of different platforms.
And it's free?
It's free. It's free. Although they have there's a paid version, but honestly, it does so much. And you know, working on the Code Black social media, like there's so much content that we have, but we also have to size it in a way that it makes sense. Nothing hurts me more than seeing that, oh, there was a video that was probably meant for something else, but it's all cut off on Instagram because maybe the person didn't have the tools to actually resize it so that it would work. So honestly, just Google, like if there's something that you're like, I wonder if there's an app to do that. Like that jingle is not a joke. There really is an app for everything. What's your favorite?
I really like Later to help with planning and just like plotting. Especially for Instagram, where you also might be thinking about not just like what does this unique piece of content look like, but looking at your grid, how does it play out? And then you also have the opportunity to schedule, and because you can use it on your desktop, if you're writing a more in-depth caption, I find that really helpful because sometimes like going back and editing
it's hard.
And Instagram can be really difficult, so I like Later for that. I also really like Canva for the ease of creating like simple graphics. So I'm not someone who's very good at that. Like it's obscene how long it takes me to put together very, very simple videos. So I need all the help I can get. Yeah. So I really like Canva and Later, but there are a ton of them, and there are always new apps that are coming out. It's so true what you said. Like if you're wondering if there's an app for it, there really
it truly is. Particularly, I find with Instagram, if you're trying to do it on your phone and you're trying to do a caption within the app, and I have had that heartbreaking moment when you're like, oh, let me just go research something and check on it. You worked so hard on doing a caption, and then it's gone. Instagram, all that to say is try and take things out of the app. If you're gonna write a caption, write it in notes, write it on your desktop, save. Saving often saves. I have a lot of platitudes today, I don't know why, but try and do it out of the app. Even editing, I think even photo editing, Visco is a really, really great one that I find a lot of.
I really like Snapseed.
I haven't used that one.
Yeah.
Truly, there's an app for everything. Like whatever you're looking for, it's there.
Yeah, and all of those things will just help you take your content the next level higher.
Yeah.
Simple modifications can actually often make really big differences.
Yes. The next tip is plan your content. So we touched on this before with the other points, but I think it's thinking through the schedule. So Maxine touched on it in terms of how much time do you actually have to plan your content, but then when you have the time, if you've set aside an hour, are you setting aside the hour to do the caption, or do you want to set aside that hour to really think, okay, what am I going to post over the next few days or the next few weeks? Really be sitting down and thinking about that, and be thinking about like, what are your themes? What are the things that you want to be talking about? Because if you can plan it, if you are able to plan, if something comes up, then you can figure out how to incorporate something coming up within that plan.
I think also if you can back things out rather than each day just thinking, okay, I need to post today, what can I post? Yeah. If you can back things out, then it'll give you it'll help you develop a better rhythm in your posting so that you have themes that you're hitting throughout the weeks, also capitalizing on maybe special days throughout the month, that sort of, and it also just helps take some of the stress out of it. If you know, okay, well, I have a week content planned ahead, or 2 weeks or a month, then it just gives you a bit more breathing room. The other thing is that planning ahead can also help you plan different types of content. So maybe not just visuals, but maybe boomerangs or short videos, collaborations. Just giving yourself that time to actually brainstorm and get a bit creative.
Yeah, I jokingly said that like being a social media manager is a full-time job, but it truly, truly is. So you need to really be thinking, how much time can I realistically devote to this? Because if you're doing this yourself and by yourself, it can take up a bulk of your time. So rather than having maybe weak content that you're just putting up every day, you can also use that time to really focus on, if I'm going to do one really great piece of content, what is it going to be? Maybe your cadence is once a week. You know, it doesn't, like, you don't need to feel that pressure to do it every single day. If your cadence is once a week, but you're really putting out something that's super powerful, a great image, a great caption, really well hashtag, really with lots of great handles, then that could be what's meaningful for your business and for your brand. So you just really have to juggle what makes sense. And I feel you about those promotional days, but don't overdo it either. I've seen it where like there are brands that they're really like, oh, it's like National Sausage Day. I'm like, well, is that really meaningful for your brand? Like really think that through. And I've fallen into this trap too, where I'm like, I don't know if it's a trap, but it's sort of being part of that global conversation around posting stuff that's motivating. So I'm like, Motivation Monday, Happy Friday. Like I'm 50-50 with that, you know, because I personally do find it motivating, and it's something that connects everyone. Like, no matter what is happening in everyone's day, the one thing, hopefully, that we can all agree on is the day of the week.
I don't know, Bunmi. If I live in Australia, we're on different days.
Well, but I hear your audience.
I hear you.
But, I mean, that also makes me think, like, depending on the algorithm too, if we're talking about Instagram, we're talking about Twitter, actually all of them, people may not be seeing your content on the day that you post it. So once upon a time, you could post it on Monday and everybody would be like, whoa, I'm motivated on Monday. But now it's like, are they going to see it on Wednesday?
They might be seeing it 6-8 hours later.
Or days later.
For the first time.
Yeah.
No, that's very true. I also think about creating content, thinking about how you can maximize your investment. So perhaps if you're taking photos, think about how much you can pull out of that photo shoot. How many different setups can you have? Or even if, you know, some of the photos are similar, using them weeks, months, days later to also just like stretch out the use. If you're producing a video and maybe you're posting it long form on like IGTV, or you're doing a live stream, can you edit it and get different cuts that you can use on stories or use in feed at a later time? Just thinking about like what are all the ways you can maximize whatever content you're producing is always really helpful, especially when we've talked about the fact that it's time consuming to be present on so many platforms. Yeah.
And I think if you're a brand that has the means to create that content for the long term, you may want to be, for example, if it's Christmas, you may want to be thinking about, how do I shoot my Christmas content, let's say September, October. If we're looking at doing things quarterly, you want to be able to plan that shoot. So you don't want to be doing like a Christmas specific shoot. Maybe you're thinking of, okay, I've got to shoot for Thanksgiving, I've got to shoot for Christmas, I've got to shoot, what other things are in Q4? I'm trying to think of what other things, Halloween. So you need to be just thinking about what are little props or things that I can have around if I'm doing a shoot, if I have the means to do a shoot, to make sure that I have that content for when that time comes around.
Then another way to create content is by working with influencers. And this is a hot topic.
I feel like influencers too, like, I feel some people get scared when they hear the word influencer.
It's a bit overwhelming.
Yes.
They're like, how do I do it? How much does it cost? Where do I find them? Is it gonna work? And like these are all very real questions. Can be very overwhelming. But I think that working with influencers can be very simple. It can also be very complicated. It just depends on what your needs are.
Yeah, and I mean, if you're a business that's, I was gonna say just starting out, but honestly, if you're any business, look at your circle. Look at who's around you. Like, is it friends? Is it family? Is it kids? Is it your pet? You know, what are things around you that you can act? They're influencers, they're people. But who are people that you can call on to help you promote your brand? And I think if you have a product or service, it's something that you can actually use, like barter with and be like, here, I'd love for you to try this. I'd love for you to take some shots of it. Can you post about it, or can I have those shots so I can repost as well?
Yeah, I think that it can be really simple like that. You can like barter, you can offer them a discount. If your product or service is super expensive, then like that might be appropriate. Sometimes people also work through, like I guess you could say like referral sales, where they will offer an influencer a specific code that they can post, and then any sales generated through that code, the influencer would get a portion of the proceeds. So that's another way, another form of compensation. And then there's also just straight cold hard cash. But I think the big picture here is that there are many ways of like compensating an influencer. I think it is important to say that there should be some sort of compensation. Like
there should be, at the very least, the product.
Yeah, understanding that it takes time to create thoughtful content, so we always want to value people's work. So compensation is a thing. Other quick tips, I think, in terms of working with influencers, you want to think about alignment. So, and it goes back to what we were talking about, being a brand.
The brand being a person.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if you know your audience resides primarily on Facebook, you want to think about working with influencers who have a presence on Facebook. If they have a strong presence on Instagram, but they don't really have a presence on Facebook, then there's not a match there. Or maybe if primarily your audience is in city centers, or maybe it's in Ontario, but that person is really well known in Quebec.
Does that make sense? If you have no audience in Quebec, does that make sense?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So just thinking about, is there alignment here? Do I feel that the people who are going to buy my product are going to be connected to that person?
And I feel like there's two parts to that. Like, let's say there is an influencer in Montreal and they don't really connect with your brand, but you really love their aesthetic. You really love the kind of content that they're creating. So you just want to think about what your needs are as well. If they create beautiful content that will work for you and will resonate with your audience in Toronto, and really go, like when we're talking about the brand being a person, and you're like, yes, that's the person that I want to be associated with my brand, or that's the aesthetic that I want to have for my brand, then that's a way to work with them so that you're actually getting something out of that partnership as well.
You can also think about it as a way to expand your audience. So, like going back to the Toronto-Montreal thing, maybe your audience is primarily in Toronto, but now you're trying to break into a new market. That would be a time to think about working with someone in that space. But it's just, I think, the main thing here is being thoughtful. It's really not just taking things completely at face value. This person has 50,000 followers, I know them, done, sold. It's thinking about, okay, let's make sure that there's alignment. It makes sense when I actually think it through. And then I would also say part of being thoughtful is thinking about what you want your content to look like, having a conversation so that you're both on the same page, understanding, you know, what you like about what they do so that they have an understanding of what you're going for, thinking about the timing that you want things to launch, just having a conversation so that you're all on the same page. And it is important to disclose if it's paid content.
And I think we're talking about a next level of influencer as well. So it depends on where you are again with your brand. Like if you're a brand that has the means to actually have like a full influencer program, then I think definitely all of that. But again, like the other side of it too is if you're not quite there yet, but you have a great product, there's that other side too where you can kind of work through how you're going to work with that influencer. Because like when we started, we said like influencer can sound like a scary word, but it doesn't need to be. It's like what you said, it's like being mindful of what that influencer needs, but also what your needs are in communicating and talking about what's going to be meaningful for both parties.
No, that is a really good point, that it can be very simple. So perhaps even like going back to what you're saying about looking at your circle, even in finding influencers, you may find people who are already following your brand, who are already loyal customers, and it's sort of just taking that relationship to the next step. So
I really love that.
I noticed that you're a loyal customer, you post organically, maybe can we create something that is a bit more formal? There's lots of ways.
I love that because I feel like that rewards someone that actually really connected and cared about your brand anyway.
Yeah, and I think you get the best content when there's actually an authentic connection versus, sorry, what's your brand called again? What does it do again?
And how much are you gonna pay me? Because I find this, I've had, and I think both of us have had that experience where you've maybe paid influencers loads and loads of dollars, and they may not have come through the way you had hoped to. And then there are other influencers where you paid them less, and they like just they over deliver. And you're just like, and that to me, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna work with that person again and again and again and again because they care about this brand.
Yeah, and it's very obvious in terms of the product.
And I think this makes, when we're talking about how people are naturally connecting with the brand, I think when we're talking about social media, it's super important. Have your social media channels and your hashtags and your links on your product. If you have a product, like have it on the label, or if you have a service, make sure you're sharing it somewhere. If you have a business card, make sure it's on the business card. Make it easy for people that love your brand to actually connect with you.
Yeah, to find it and engage.
Yeah, I feel like I work with brands where I've been like, but I'll look at the package and I'll be like, but where's your social media? And they're like, oh, and I'm like, you're literally distributing this to so many people. Like, put that everywhere. It's like parsley, sprinkle it on everything. Archive, this is our next one. So archive.
What do you mean by archive?
So for example, on Instagram, you can archive old content. To me, if it doesn't,
but what does archive mean?
It means to remove the content that was there before. And what I mean about that is maybe you posted some content before that doesn't, it doesn't align with your brand at all. So maybe at first you were posting blurry pictures, and then you saw this, and then you're like, wow,
blurry pictures, and
ain't it?
Yeah. Or maybe you had a product and you no longer sell it.
Yes.
And so now it's not relevant. You want to remove it.
Yeah, I think it's really thinking through. Like, does that make sense anymore for me?
Yeah.
And it's not deleting, like, because
you can unarchive.
Yes.
It can pop back up on your feed.
Yes.
But it's a way of sort of like editing,
cleaning it up.
Yeah.
I think it's actually a good practice. I feel like some people are like, well, it's part of my history. It's a scrapbook that I'm creating. But I'm like, it's your brand. So you just want to like keep that really clean and streamlined.
That's something I haven't historically done a lot of, but
especially
I'm gonna take a look at my feed.
Especially things like I also find like if things haven't performed well and you're just sitting there looking at this thing that didn't perform well and you're like, why are you here?
Well, as you develop, sometimes your aesthetic changes, so things like, as you said, it doesn't fit anymore. So I think that's
just be constantly tweaking it and looking at it.
Yeah. The next thing is numbers. Letting the numbers
1, 2, 3, 4. The numbers. funny, let me tell ya.
A lot of people like hate numbers. They what we're really talking about is like your analytics, your performance metrics, how your post performs, how people engaged with it, how many people saw it.
Which should be fun.
It can be very fun.
Yeah.
It can tell you a lot. So as you're thinking about how you show up on social media, what themes, what sort of angles you take, how you, like even how you position things in photos, your analytics can tell you a lot. It can also tell you a lot about your audience. So when are they online? Is it specific days of the week, times of the day? It can tell you about your audience demographics.
Are they mostly men? Are they mostly men? Are they mostly women? What age are they? Where do they reside in the country, in the world? Sorry, yeah, go on.
I just think that there's a lot that you can learn there, and everything from the type of content that you post to how well does your audience on social media align with your audience for your business. Because you could find that maybe you thought that your brand positioning was, you know, women 25 to 35 who were in Brampton. But then you actually find that online your audience is actually older and they're in Mississauga.
Yeah.
There are a lot of things that you can figure out by looking at your analytics.
Even looking at those analytics, it can even help you to understand where is my audience that I can go to physically to be with them. Where should I be advertising? If you're taking things off digital, should I be doing a direct mail campaign and doing it within this particular community? So I think what I do love about social media is I feel like it gives you a little taste of what's going on inside people's minds and what they're responding to.
Yeah.
Because people are not going to tell you, but the numbers don't lie.
Going back to influencers, your analytics can also tell you how your partnerships
Oh my
are
gosh,
going.
yeah.
So maybe you worked with someone you thought that it would be really great, and that content with that person underperformed. Or maybe it did so much better than any of your other content. That's a way to help you like figure out, is this successful? Is this a road that I want to continue down, or do I need to like adjust?
Yeah, so true. The next piece is, and we've talked about this before, hashtags. Hashtags. Generally have more than one?
I tend to like having more than one. I know that there are some different practices. Like sometimes people will use one hashtag, whether they use it like within the caption organically, like almost within a sentence, or they might have it at the end. And then also sometimes what people will do is they'll have their primary caption with maybe one hashtag, and then they'll have a secondary caption which will come in the form of a comment where they'll use a number of hashtags. So I tend to like that practice. I think that it looks quite crowded if you have a bunch of hashtags within your caption.
That's a lot.
So that's what I would suggest. I think that you can have fun with hashtags. You know, sometimes it can be kind of funny, you know, when you create a hashtag that's like a sentence.
And then you realize there are other people that are thinking that way. You're like, wow. People are like, I hate cilantro, hashtag, and you're like,
I'm positive that is a very popular
100% it is.
But the main thing is that you can have fun with hashtags. It's good to have more than one. It's good to have at least one. And typically, I would say that primary hashtag should be consistent. It's the one that you associate with your brand. And then also thinking about how you select other hashtags. I think you want to be broad so that you are bringing in a wider audience, but not necessarily so broad that it's like when you search the hashtag, there are like 3.5 million people using it.
Yeah, I agree. And I would say, this is something I learned, click on those hashtags after just to check what actually is under them, because sometimes what you think is under those hashtags is not what you want.
I think that there's a very interesting story there. Maybe Bunmi will tell us.
I'll tell you privately.
Make sure that you tune in to the next episode.
Tell us about that hashtag that scarred you. I think the other thing that we talked about is focus on engagement. So we've talked about like likes and followers and things like that. To me, engagement is comments. I feel like that's something where somebody's actually having to do something to interact with your comment. I think it's regramming or retweeting. So someone actually was moved enough to actually behave in a certain way. I think like is sort of the basic that you can do. But that's what I mean by engagement. And sometimes you can have, sometimes I think, yes, followers are really great to have, but what number I'm looking for and when I'm talking with clients about things that they should be focusing on, I'm talking about engagement. Who's actually doing something to show that, wow, this content actually made me feel like I wanted to do something.
So that's sort of connected to what we were talking about before, where we were saying like let the numbers guide you. Mm-hmm. This is like, I think connected is like part 2 of that is looking at engagement. So who's liking, who's sharing, who's saving the post. That's a good one. That's a metric. All of those things will show you how connected to the content people actually are, and that'll also help you figure out what works best and what's performing best.
I would say the other thing about engagement is someone is taking the time to comment or regram, retweet, particularly, I'm going to focus it on Instagram, particularly on Instagram, comment back. Like you want that engagement. We all know how we feel when our favorite brand or personality or influencer or celebrity is just like, I see you. You're like, oh, it gives you that little spark. So you may be that spark for that person. So comment back. Be like, thank you so much. Like it takes time, but at the end of the day, it's also your business. So you want to make sure that you're showing that there's, going back to what we said, if your brand is a person, how would they respond?
How would they speak? I think that is really something that for all platforms, because you think about it on Twitter, if you tweet something, on Facebook, people are engaging with your content. Even though it's time consuming, it's a really good practice to respond back.
It's amazing.
And that's how you develop a community as well. And organically, it can provide opportunities for you to talk more about your brand. But I think having those conversations is super important.
I think so, especially when you're just starting. I get it. If you have 1 million followers, true followers, and you have like 500,000 of them DMing you, that's a little bit a lot to handle. But if you have a smaller following, I've seen people that have like 100,000 followers. I'll comment on their product or thing, and they'll comment back. Or I'll post that I like something on my stories, and they'll re-story on their stories. So it's those little things that just make the difference between someone that's kind of like, oh, that's cool, they're kind of there, I follow them, to, oh yeah, I remember why I follow them, because they actually care about what I have to say.
Yeah. I think this is not exactly what we're talking about, but I think it's also important to note that when we talk about engaging, like one thing that I would suggest brands don't do is that you'll see a conversation happening on Instagram or Twitter or whatever platform, and someone posts something, and then the brand enters the conversation and is like, hey, I do this, and it has nothing to do with the conversation, but they're trying to like promote their brand. That's not a good form of engagement.
They just crash it. You're having a nice conversation at the party. No, like walk me through this a bit more. I think I have.
Yeah, so it'll be like maybe on, let's say, Instagram, and there's like a post, and there's tons of comments happening, and someone will enter the conversation and be like, I listened to my mixtape, or
yes, like, I have seen those. I'm like,
or they're like,
delete.
Head to my page to see my line of waist trainers.
Don't hate on the waist trainers.
I'm just saying that's not the way to on social media. This episode is also called Maxine's Pet Peeves.
Content. I feel like we've talked a lot about this. I think the big thing is read the room as well.
Yeah.
If there is a major world event happening If there is something horrible that happens from a city level, if there's something that is important to your audience that is going to be impacting them,
think about that.
Yeah.
And adjust yourself. Adjust yourself in your content so that you are being considerate and thoughtful and not tone deaf.
Yes.
It's very, like, I think that's very important. But on the flip side, also reading the room also means looking for opportunities where that you might be able to insert your brand or your product in a really meaningful and
authentic way. Authenticity, yes.
So it's just being flexible. It's about being flexible.
I didn't mean to shake my finger at you. I didn't mean that. I meant to be like this.
Welcome. And last but not least,
have fun.
Have fun. It's as much as we've talked about the fact that social media, building your presence requires time and being thoughtful and brainstorming. It also is about having fun, trying new things, and not getting hung up if you've done something that doesn't exactly work. Taking the time to learn from it and adjust, but have fun.
Give yourself a break too. Like it's like one of the fun, to me, it's one of the most interesting parts of PR.
Yeah.
Like actually getting in there and like creating like this persona.
Yeah. So have fun.
Have fun. So this is us. Those were our tips. Should we go through them really quickly?
Yeah, let's do that.
So 1. Think through your foundation. What are those basics? Strong visual, great caption, good hashtags, good tagging, good tools that you're using.
Yeah. Inspiration. Find accounts, brands, businesses that inspire you so that you can use it as an opportunity to find ideas to build on for your own brand.
Be consistent. Try and use the same handle across all your social media platforms.
Who are you? Think about what your brand represents. Have a consistent bio that really tells a description of what you do, how you do it, and who you are.
Be a brand. And think of your brand as that person. We've talked a lot about this throughout this chat that we've been having. If you think of your brand as a person, that's a really great guide for you to determine what content you're posting, when you're posting, who you're partnering with.
Use tools. Use the resources that are available to you. There's lots of free ones like Planoly, Later, Canva, InShot. Use them to help you create content easily and quickly.
And where you can, create your own content. So if you are a photographer, use that. If you have video, use that. If you play music, use your own content. But failing that,
work with influencers. Find influencers that align with your brand values, location, target audience to help you create new content and expand to larger audiences.
When in need, archive. If the image or the content is not serving you anymore or is not relevant anymore, don't be afraid just to archive that. Get that off your feed to make sure that everything that is actually on your feed is serving your greater objective.
Let the numbers guide you. Use insights to help you determine what to post and when to post.
Hashtags, hashtags, hashtags. This is one you're going to remember. Use those hashtags. Try and use more than one. Make sure they're relevant. Make sure that they actually reach the audience that you want them to reach. Check the hashtags. There's a story.
Focus on engagement, not just reach. Focus on who's engaging with what posts and how that's working.
Plan your content. Don't be tone deaf. So really be thinking about what is going on in the world so that you're not posting, but also what is going on in ways that you can engage the audience that you're trying to connect with. And finally, have fun! Woo! Look at us, having fun. So we hope you enjoyed this episode of SheaMoisture virtual series about social media 101.
I'm Maxine McDonald.
I'm Bunmi Adeoye, and we are
Code
Code Black.
And we're super happy to share our thoughts with you. Follow us on social media at Code Black CN.
And if you're watching this video on YouTube, be sure to comment, like, and subscribe so that you can see more from SheaMoisture on events, hair tutorials, and other great episodes in the series like this.
Bye for now.